Before we jump into the details, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, so you never miss an update on the latest crime cases we unravel together. April 2019. Canning Town, located in East London, is a vibrant urban district known for its rich industrial history and diverse community. Two women leading distinct lives on the streets of London, both facing vulnerability. This narrative delves into the harsh reality of domestic violence against women striving for normalcy and acceptance in society, only to become victims of predatory forces. Henriette, also known as Heni, entered this world in Hungary in 1984. By the late 2000s, she departed her native country following the dissolution of her marriage to the father of her children. After spending some time in Germany, she arrived in the UK in 2012, eventually working as a prostitute in East London. At 32 years old, originally from Hungary, Heni had previously experienced abusive relationships, but continued to hold on to her belief in love. Following a brief return home, during which she made the difficult decision to give a baby up for adoption, Heni relocated to Birmingham in 2014 with a Hungarian companion. Unfortunately, the promised employment opportunities never materialized, and he absconded, taking Heni's passport and birth certificate with him. In the beginning of 2015, Henriette appeared with a smile in a local newspaper article highlighting the charity, and as winter gave way to spring, her prospects started to look promising. Engaging in group activities and contemplating the initiation of a college course, Henriette seemed to be on a positive path. However, in a matter of months, she fell under the influence of a violent man who coerced her into engaging in prostitution. In 2016, Heni found refuge in a safe house for trafficking victims after being thrown from a building by a man who was on bail for an alleged rape against her. The CPS had initially refused to press rape charges when the incident was first reported in February 2015. Her connection with the Metropolitan Police was lost when she encountered a man whom she believed would bring positive changes to her life. However, shortly after, she fell under the influence of a violent man who coerced her into engaging in prostitution. This man was identified as Zahid Yunus. An associate who saw her one day thought she was barely recognizable. She was bruised and thin, seemingly addicted to intravenous drugs, referring to her pimp, and saying she had been beaten up. She wrote a letter to the man she loved and trust. "Let me tell you something about how I feel for you. Really love you and I mean it. Bottom of my heart, to the stars and back. I didn't want to lose you. And I won't let that ever happen. This is true. Just wanna love you." In return, she received very little. During her life in the UK, she was brutalized, forced to work as a prostitute, and became addicted to drugs. The pictures she drew were of a better world: butterflies, angels, a smiling woman in a flowing dress beside a fairy tale carriage. No one had reported her missing. A woman named Mirakan Jan Mustafa, known as Jan or MJ, was a mother of 3 from East London. A 38-year-old. Her life is evolved in the streets with homelessness and addiction. She doesn't have permanent address. She became increasingly vulnerable as a result of her addiction to drugs. He met the boxer, Zahid Yunus. In early May 2018, her family saw her for the last time at her mother's home. She then vanished. The Mustafa family conducted their own investigations and appeals for information, followed up potential sightings themselves, and tried to generate media coverage. In July 2018, officers responsible for monitoring Yunus visited his flat and asked him about Jan, whom he admitted knowing but only through a friend. He was told that if he saw Jan he should report it. Within days, she was reported missing by her worried family. The Met's missing person inquiry into Mustafa, which started in 2018, did not examine vital phone evidence, which would have shown contact with Yunus around the time she vanished. It is now the subject of an internal Scotland Yard inquiry after her family made a series of complaints. Zahid Yunus, 36, is a brash and arrogant figure, who would refer to himself as Ali, after the heavyweight great. He was known for the boxer. He promoted himself online as a singer, songwriter. In reality, he was a thief and con artist, who would work occasional shifts helping transport fruit for a market stall. In 2002, A teenage girl told police that Yunus had attacked her with a hammer and crowbar, after falsely imprisoning her. No further action was taken. In 2007, 26 charges against Yunus relating to 2 young teenage girls were discontinued after a judge directed that a jury should clear him of many of the offenses following evidence from one of the victims. In 2008, a plea agreement resulted in several charges against Yunus being discontinued, including rape and sexual assault. 2018, Yunus was in jail for assaulting an officer. Yunus has an elderly Christian woman friend, whom he constantly manipulative just to get money from her. He always saying to this woman that he doesn't have anybody, only her and the Lord Jesus. But in April 2019, after he failed to contact her for a few days, she reported him to the police as a missing person. Officers then went to his flat to check on his welfare. They gained entry through a window and, coming across a locked freezer in a cupboard, opened it out of concern for Yunus. He was not in, but officers gained entry and noticed the lockable freezer, around which flies were gathering. The remains of Henriette Souks and Mirakan Mustafa were discovered at Zahid Yunus's flat in Canning Town, East London, in April 2019. Inside the freezer, Heni Souks, 32, was apparently killed 2016. Jan Mustafa, 38, was last heard from in May 2018. Yunus bought the freezer November 2016. Among the items found in Yunus's flat were poems by both the women he murdered. Yunus, known as Boxer, denied murder, but did admit putting the women in the freezer, pleading guilty to 2 counts of preventing the lawful and decent burial of a body. They had both suffered numerous rib fractures, while Ms. Souks had sustained dreadful head injuries and Ms. Mustafa's sternum and larynx had been fractured. The nature of the crime scene meant a cause of death could not be established, but the scientific evidence showed that the women had been subjected to serious violence before their deaths. They had both suffered numerous rib fractures, while Ms. Souks had sustained dreadful head injuries and Ms. Mustafa's sternum and larynx had been fractured. He received a life sentence, with a minimum jail term of 38 years. Ms. Souks and Ms. Mustafa were vulnerable women living somewhat chaotic lives, including periods of homelessness and drug addiction.